Today, I'm going to show you guys how to install a Siorfi rear seat and rear roll cage system for a Yamaha Rhino. My particular Rhino happens to be a 2009. And as I get ready to install the seat and to install the rear roll cage, there's a few things that we need to do to get this machine ready. Number one, we need to get rid of this hard top that came with the Rhino from factory. We also are going to talk a little bit about how to prepare your bed since you're going to be putting in a full seat system and a roll cage. A few things you can do before you do that may save you a little bit of time down the road. First things first, get rid of this hard top. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, like I said, the first thing we need to do is we need to get rid of this hard top that comes with the factory. Now, not all of you will have a hard top. Some of you may not have it, or you may have a soft canvas top on it. If you have a canvas top, obviously the removal is going to be a little bit different, but for those of you that have this factory hardtop, let me show you how to do that. Real simple. Basically just held on by several of these little C-clamps with a Phillips screwdriver. Simply remove the screws, pull the clamps down, and you're good. One little tidbit, maybe a little tip. Make sure you might want to get a baggie or something to put these screws in, just to make sure you don't lose them when you need to reattach. Okay, now with that factory hardtop off, let's talk about the bed. So if you come around over here, you'll notice that I've got a little, a little tailgate here. I have the mat that came with the Rhino from factory. If you look underneath, obviously, you've been out, you've got some dirt, you've got some debris in here. I highly recommend that you take the time to either sweep this out or wash it out before you install the seat system. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll get ready and start pulling off some other things to get ready for the installation. Okay, next step is we need to prepare the existing roll cage to accept our add-on bolt-on roll cage. Now on your machine you're going to have two from factory rear stabilizer or crossbars here. The nice thing about this system is we are able to keep this front crossbar that has the handle for us, but we are going to get rid of this second one. That's a pretty simple job, just simple some Allen wrench bolts. There's 4 here. I will say that you may want to put some liquid wrench or something on before to prepare the bolts, as they are pretty tight from factory, but once they're ready to go, should be pretty simple to pull them off. Okay, with our cross member gone here, it's now time to focus on the roll cage and the seat. Now the first part of the instruction we need to do, according to Siorfi, is to attach the seat to the base unit. Now as you'll see on the seat here, you have 4 pivot areas on the bottom of the seat. We're going to focus on these front 2 pivot areas and put those in line with the 2 pre-drilled holes in the front of the base assembly. They've provided bolts and some locking nuts. All we're going to do is put the seat on, thread the nuts through, tighten them just enough so that we can use the seat as a hinge, so that we can hinge it forward as we put our seat belts in. Okay, so you can see I've got the seat with the hinged mount up front, or the 2 bolts up front to create the hinged effect for the seat. Our next step is to install the 3-point harnesses that I purchased with my Siorfi set. Yours may have a different set, but we're going to go ahead and install 2 sets of 3-point harnesses. Let's show you how to do that right now. Okay, we're going to start with the first harness. Obviously the other one would go on in a very similar manner. There are 3, as you can see, there are 3 different bolt-on receivers here for this harness. There's one for each side of the lap belt, and then there's one that goes over the top of the seat in the back. So what I like to do is I like to lay out my harness the way that the passenger would see it as they get in. Helps me make sure everything's lined up correctly, make sure I don't have any twists or anything in the belts before I make the bolt on. Again, each Each mounting point has its own slot that's already pre-made inside of the Siorfi seat. So what we're going to do is we're just simply going to feed each one into each opening here. We will slide them through, and then I'll show you how they attach onto the back. Okay, here is the back side of the seat as we get ready to prepare our harness to be bolted on here. As you can see in the back, we have some pre-drilled holes. There's 6 in all, 3 for each harness, in the back of the base mounting plate of the Siorfi seat. One for each, obviously. One of the things that we talked about earlier was mounting only the front bolts of the seat so that we can have a hinging effect, and this is where this really comes in handy. The side belts are really easy to slide through, and we'll simply just mount these on with the provided bolts that came with the harnesses. But the center one's a little bit more difficult. Obviously, excuse me, the center one here is quite simple here, but the center slot in the seat for the opposite side of the lap belt is a little bit more difficult to feed through. So all we're going to do is be able to lift this up, feed through, pull it through the bottom, and be able to make the attachment. Okay, with our center belt pulled through the seat, what we're going to do is we're simply going to apply the brackets here with the mounting hardware that came with the harnesses, and we're going to do 3 for each. One here in the center, one here, and then obviously this one here at the end. Okay, now that we've got the harnesses in place, we're going to go ahead and, if you remember, there's actually 4 bolts or 4 mounting points that actually hold the seat down. We left the 2 in the back off so we could have that pivoting action. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add the final 2 bolts to the rear pivoting points on the bottom base unit, tighten up the front bolts, make sure we're all square to go. Next thing you know, time to put it in the rig. Okay, with my seat firmly attached at all 4 points to the roll cage harness, I am now ready to install the full roll cage here into the machine. Now what it's going to do, it's going to simply sit here in the back of your Rhino, and you'll notice that you have some tie down points here that will actually be leveraged for the cage to be secured firmly in place. So if you happen to be missing these points or these hook areas, you will need to have them for this to be a successful install. Okay, so now that we have the rack and the seat assembled, I've set the assembly here in the back, just kind of loose fit, make sure everything looks good. Probably the initial step, I think the most common step most people would think of, is to reattach this cross member. Again, remember we took out the factory cross member that was between the rear of the factory roll cage. The nose, or the front piece of the Siorfi system, actually replaces that, and I think the common mistake is that people will immediately go and bolt in this front. However, I'm going to show you how it assembles in the back, which may make you double think about putting this in first. Okay, here's the rear assembly of how you fasten down the actual assembly for the Siorfi system. It uses what they call J-bolts. As you can see, it's a long bolt that's been bent here with a threaded end. Now this will actually feed through, remember those tie-down marks that we talked about earlier. These will actually feed through and then up through a pre-drilled hole in the back on a mounting plate of the assembly. Now if you make the mistake of bolting on the top pieces first of the cross member up front, what you're going to have is you're going to have a difficult time feeding this J-bolt through this tie-down area and then back up through this pre-drilled hole. So what I did is I made sure I left those cross member bolts undone, didn't even attempt to put those in, and it allowed me to feed the J-bar through and then lift up on the unit right here on the back and make sure that I could successfully thread this J-bolt in place. Now, Siorfi provides a nut that will go over the top of this that you will simply clamp down, which will pull up on this tie down to securely fasten the back part of the assembly. Now, as you can see, I have loosely assembled this rear tie down area for stabilization of the assembly. And you'll notice one thing that might be a little tip. It doesn't come with the kit, but you'll notice that this metal piece will end up sitting directly on the back of the bed of the Rhino. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and find some nice durable rubber, and I will most likely get a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch piece of rubber, and I'm going to put this underneath between my bracket and my bed, hopefully save up this nice paint job. With the rear now in place, and with our J-bolts in place, but loosely in place of course, we're now ready to go ahead and to use the factory bolts that we got from our original cross member and use those to fasten in the front crossbar of the Siorfi system. Now that the front cross member is securely in place, all the bolts are tightened, I noticed that as I tighten these front bolts, the rear J-bolts began to loosen a little bit as I took some pressure off of those rear joint hinge points onto this front cross member. All I simply did, made sure that we were good to go up front, re-tighten those J-bolts in the back, and we're good to go. That's it. The system is now fully installed. Now you remember, I had a hard cover that had the one over the top of my front assembly. Now I'm going to show you a little trick that we're going to end up using to make sure that I don't have to buy a new one or throw this one away. So here's my original cover that I had from the factory. As you can see, this being the front, this being the back, you can see that I've got quite a bit of a curvature here in the back. Now, with this new system on place, you'll notice that I no longer have that radius to work with. I now have a straight bar. So what I'm simply going to do is I'm going to dry fit this unit right back on top. I'm not going to use the C-clamps or anything. I'm just going to dry fit, line it up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a silver Sharpie and highlight the points that show the width of the tubing here on the new assembly, and I'm going to add about a 1/2 inch on each side, grab a Sawzall, cut it deep, make it fit, put it right back on, and we should be good to go. That's it. I hope you were able to find value in this training. Really looking forward to getting this out on the trail with the family and see how they like it.